All right, I want to thank everybody for coming in on short notice. We have some additional information that we want to release this afternoon as it pertains to the shooting investigation from over the weekend. Just to recap, on the 13th of October around 12:40 a.m., we had officers that were working off duty in uniform at the Sportsman's Bar at 2315 West Franklin. They were notified that shots had been fired near the rear of the establishment. One of the officers located an individual that was armed. He had a handgun in his hand. The officer was able to detain him and disarm him and place him into custody without incident. The officer observed that that individual had facial injuries, and he also observed a second individual just inside the door also had some visible injuries. There was a group of individuals that came in through the door while that detention was going on that were making comments about the individual who had been armed shooting one of their brothers. The officer was able to get assistance from the second officer that was working off duty at the establishment, and the individuals who had come in after the shooting were escorted back outside into the parking lot. The events that unfolded over the next few minutes led to officers providing medical care for a shooting victim that has since been identified as Laren Hall, L-A-R-E-N, Hall, also known as Laren Wilson. He's a 23-year-old Evansville resident. One of the individuals that was involved in the altercation that the officer saw had facial injuries or visible injuries has been identified as James Bales. He is 27 years old, and he is from the Shoals, Indiana area. At this point, he is being viewed as a witness/victim of an assault that occurred in the parking lot, and he is not the person who discharged a firearm during this incident. We spoke with several witnesses at the scene that witnessed the majority of this incident, if not all of it. A key witness to this was an employee who was on a break in the rear of the restaurant, and his testimony to the detectives that night included statements that a large group of individuals had chased two men to the back of the bar through the parking lots at the rear of the establishment. He said that he saw at least one of the men go to the ground and, in his words, was getting beat up pretty badly. We believe that the incident that he was witnessing was the incident that led up to the shooting. We spoke to additional witnesses that night that gave some information that corroborated that. And in the days since, we have been able to locate video surveillance from nearby businesses that corroborates the independent witnesses' statements that two individuals were walking together towards the rear of the bar, and that a large group of individuals pursued them through multiple parking lots. At this point, it's still an active investigation, so we are not going to release the surveillance video, but again, it does corroborate what we were told that night, that two individuals, including the one that was armed, had been pursued through multiple parking lots by a group of individuals that included 5 to 6 people. At the conclusion, or at the end of that pursuit, if you will, video shows 5 or 6 individuals at a dead sprint running at the two individuals that were at the back door of Sportsman's. At this point, we have not seen video that shows the assault itself or the shot being fired, but there's a significant amount of video that again corroborates the statements that we were given that night. At this point, this investigation is still active. Criminal charges have not been filed, but if additional information comes in, it will be taken into consideration. This is being looked at as a possible case of self-defense. In Indiana, you are allowed to discharge a firearm or use deadly force in the defense of yourself or others. Based on statements that we have received and video evidence that we have viewed, we believe that this is a case where that type of defense can be pursued. We have been in communication with the prosecutor's office since shortly after this incident and providing them real-time updates on information that we were receiving from the witnesses as well as those that were involved. They have been involved in the decisions at this point to not file criminal charges, but again, it is still an active investigation. The individual that fired the handgun is not being publicly identified at this point because he has not been listed as a suspect, and we are still wanting to speak with him. He exerted his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, so we are waiting to get an opportunity once he speaks with an attorney to talk with him. But based on what we do know at this time, criminal charges have not been filed. There were several individuals that were involved in the altercation. The video clearly shows 5 to 6 people running towards these two men just prior to the assault. We spoke with several of those individuals at the scene, and we have identified them, but their comments to us that night were basically, we didn't see anything, we don't know what happened, look at the cameras, do your job. Those individuals, most of them were known to law enforcement prior to that night, do not have the best relationship with law enforcement due to some of their previous actions, but they were not willing to give us any type of statement. Based on the videos that we have seen, we know that they were at the scene, they were directly involved in the incident. However, again, they have refused to cooperate and give a statement, with the exception of one person who was at the scene that has come forward and provided a statement, but that is 1 out of 5 or 6. We know that there's been some comments in the community. The phrase a murder being swept under the rug has come up through social media, but with any case that we've discussed before, we have to receive information from the community. If you stand back as a witness or an involved party to an incident and you refuse to speak with law enforcement, that impacts our ability to gather information and pursue criminal charges if it's warranted. There were other people in that area the night that it happened. You can tell by the video surveillance that some of them were completely unaware of what was happening nearby. We believe that others may have been in the parking lot that do have information that can be pertinent. So we are still asking for people to come forward at this point. Does anybody have any questions?
Can you spell Bales for us?
B-A-L-E-S.
The two, or the ones that wouldn't cooperate, and you saw them on video as being somewhat directly or indirectly involved, would they be facing any charges now?
Our investigation at this point is focused on the death of Mr. Hall. But if there was an assault prior to that, that is something that will be reviewed. Those individuals are not only on the surveillance video, but they're on body cam footage as well. There were multiple individuals that fled the scene prior to police becoming involved, even though officers were at the scene. We believe that we have identified some, if not all of them, and are making an effort to reach out to them. But the ones that did remain at the scene are on body cam, even though officers are basically pleading with them to remain at the scene and provide information. They have no desire to do so.
Was Mr. Hall one of the two behind the sportsman's bar, or was he one of the group that was coming toward the two?
Mr. Hall was in the group of individuals that pursued the two men to the back of the bar. He's clearly seen on video. And this pursuit, to be clear, was approximately a city block. We don't have direct footage of where it started, but you can tell from the footage that this wasn't something that happened and then 50 feet later it escalated. The two men that ended up behind Sportsman had made an effort to get away from the initial confrontation, where we believe words had been exchanged, but there was no physical altercation. And it's clear that they had gotten quite a bit of distance from them, and then you see other individuals that are actually running in their pursuit of these individuals through the parking lot, and they're coming in from different angles. The video really corroborates what the independent witness was telling us. So that will be a key part in this investigation. We will put together a case file. We will remain in communication with the prosecutor's office, and once the detectives have gathered all of the statements that they feel are available and all of the video evidence that is available, they'll present that to the prosecutor's office.
Was there more than one weapon involved?
At this point, we only know of one, and we believe that one shot was fired, and it was a handgun.
Is the prosecutor's office the one that decides whether it's self-defense or not, or would that be up to the police?
Ultimately, and they make their decisions based on the information that we provide to them. So in a case like this, they were contacted early that morning, and they were provided the information that the officers had available. Those discussions included direct contact with Nick Herman, the prosecutor himself, to ensure that we were taking this investigation in the right direction and making the right choices based on the information that was available at that moment.
I've been speaking with an individual who says he was the gentleman who gave his statement to the EPD the night of the incident, and he asked why the officer who responded to the situation did not administer emergency aid to Loren.
When the officers got out there, the people that he was with, had actually loaded him into a vehicle in an attempt to take him to the hospital on their own. The officers were out there actually asked him not to take him, and they removed him from the car, and they did administer first aid. They applied direct pressure to the wound. They notified AMR and fire. The fire station for that area is actually very close. It's, I believe, Maryland and St. Joe. So medical care was provided in a timely manner. I think with the advanced medical care that our officers can provide at times now, there's an expectation sometimes that we're going to do advanced life support type stuff, and we're not. We do have some basic first aid stuff that's with us in our cars, but if you're working inside of a building, you're not going to have immediate access, so you're doing basic first aid for that person. And it depends on what type of injury you're dealing with as to what amount of aid that you can truly provide.
You stated that two individuals had, both the gentleman who disarmed the firearm and then another individual had facial wounds. Was that other individual Mr. Hall, or was that someone else?
The two individuals that were at the rear of the establishment that had been pursued, they had been assaulted by this group of individuals prior to the shooting, is what we have been told. And the pursuit of the individuals, which is going to be a key part of any type of self-defense claim, is corroborated by video that we've seen.
Are you able to say how many times and where Mr. Hall was struck by gunfire?
That's going to be up to the coroner's report. All right, thank you guys.